and welcome to this week's Jake Reads Comics. As always, this is brought to you by Astounding Tales, the comic book done by Ray Griffith and I. This week's episode is not quite a comic, but it's an art book. It's the Dragon Ball Visual History. It's an Akira Toriyama art book. What I particularly enjoy about Dragon Ball is Toriyama's world building, his ability to draw tech, his art design, and also his ability to blend a cartoony style and a realistic style. So some panels, some characters may be more cartoony, but he could also draw very realistic looking characters. And even though his tech, it kind of blurs the line of they're not referenced, they are fictitious machines, but they all appear like they could work. They appear like they have functional gears, machinery, a lot of attention to detail. So for me, with Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and that world and all that related content, frankly, I find the stuff with energy levels, all that type of stuff, different Super Saiyan this, Super Saiyan that, I find all that stuff kind of tedious and boring. What I really enjoy is his world building, that it's a really dense world, but at the same time, he's flying by the seat of his pants. You could tell that he doesn't have a really much plotted out ahead of time, but at the same time, it is a very dense, rich world. And I love that combination, and you could really feel the excitement and the energy. So let's kind of get to it and dig in. As I stated earlier, this is an art book, so we're not really going to go through every page because it's not really a narrative, but there are some interesting parts I want to... First, it comes with this really neat poster, and this really captures what I was talking about, where Toriyama can draw these impressive looking machines and tech, but obviously this is not reference. This machine doesn't really exist in real life. But really kind of shows kind of what he can do with that blending of realism and fantasy. So this is a really cool book. I think it's about like $35. I got it not from my local public library, but the Hewlett Woodmere Public Library, and had it sent to my local library. Here's a little self-portrait of Toriyama. But so it's a visual history. So we started in 1985, and this is an image I love because it really shows that idea of the way he can blend realism and a cartoony style. That Goku is kind of depicted a little more cartoony, but then you could look at the cockpit of the jet and that attention to detail and that realism. And something else, and artists watching this may be more familiar with this. I'm the writer of Astounding Tales. I cannot draw, so take this with a grain of salt. But the design of characters in manga can sometimes be kind of I don't know if cartoony is the right word, but a less detailed, less realistic depiction. And a lot of this, I believe, is because of speed. They're not even doing monthly comics; they're doing weekly comics. However, in terms of, a face with less line work, it's still it is semiotics. It's symbolism, that the parts that you assemble, kind of it might not be a super realistic looking face, but the parts are in the right places, and there's enough lines, there's enough depiction of kind of these symbols of what a face is, and kind of put in the right places that you could recognize it as that's a great, wonderfully drawn human face. And I think some people who maybe, especially Western artists, may not realize, or not all, but some may not realize that, again, Toriyama is a great example of this, that he has a great knowledge of drawing, that it's still all the same, like fundamentals in terms of like how you assemble like a face or a body. So 85, we got Dragon Ball started, and this is the kind of stuff you get in this book. I mean, this is wonderful, especially if you're reading the manga. I'm assuming most Dragon Ball fans have seen the anime and read the manga, but if you're just getting that black and white line art, seeing images like this is really amazing. And also, a lot of this artwork, like this is from a 1985 Shonen Jump issue 13 fold-out poster. So he's producing this artwork while he's also still producing, weekly editions of the Dragon Ball. So that makes it all the more impressive, and really, why the guy, you can see why he's not drawing presently. He's an older, very wealthy man, and he's probably, the amount of work he put in those 80s and 90s is very impressive. To produce something like this while you're also doing a weekly comic is kind of knocks my socks off, at least. So again, different from different moments in the Dragon Ball manga, and you could see. For those who are not familiar, for that comics in Japan, like let's say Shonen Jump that published Dragon Ball, it's published on a weekly basis, and then like we have trade paperbacks in the West, they have the Takoban format, where it's kind of like that pocketbook, almost like a Archie Comics kind of digest format. But initially it'll come out in weekly editions of Shonen Jump, which has many comics, and one of them will feature, let's say, something like Dragon Ball, among many other stories. And then the popular ones will be ongoing and then put together and sold as Takobans and other kind of anthology, or rather omnibus formats, etc. You could really see in terms of fantasy elements, that one of the things I love about the world building in Dragon Ball is that it's a wide breadth of genres, and that's kind of some of my favorite stuff, that where you could play with every genre. So you can see he's doing fantasy, fighting. So it kind of started out as a fantasy book, and then where he's going on quests, assembling the Dragon Balls, meets Bulma, and then it slowly evolves into a fighting comic. So the evolution of Dragon Ball is what I really enjoy as well, that he goes from different genres, the characters evolve. It's very rare in manga that you would change the art design of a character, especially a popular protagonist like Goku, from a little boy to when he's an adult, is a completely different design and style. 86, we're already getting video games. So or rather, the anime and video games in 96. So it's right off the bat a big hit. We already got the things like the Red Ribbon Army that will be reoccurring characters or plot devices. Master Roshi's sister. We're already getting a lot, and this is one of the great examples of Akira Toriyama designing tech. And what I really enjoy or one of the many things I enjoy about his artwork, that this is obviously not a real machine. I don't think you could reference this anymore. Or the way he draws a car, that it's very convincing, that you could tell that's a car right away. It seems to be a functioning car. It's detailed, but at the same time, it's not. That's not. I don't know where one would purchase this car or this flying machine. But they're very convincing in their functionality, but they're also, as far as the car, is kind of a cartoony style, and this is just kind of his own made-up kind of machine. So again, that's a perfect example of one of the things I really love about Akira Toriyama's art. And again, this is the same thing. Again, this is not a real machine one can purchase in a store, but very convincing that there's some functionality to it. This is from Weekly Shonen Jump, 1986, issue 43, chapter 93, title page. So you can see kind of the massive amount of art, even early on, that he is producing. Let's go ahead. Kind of, you're seeing the different size. So it did, while it did evolve into a fighting manga, it still it was also a lot of adventure elements. So dealing with the Red Ribbon Army and the various generals in charge of that. Personally, I actually enjoy the tone of Dragon Ball, and then as opposed to Dragon Ball Z. I love Dragon Ball Z. That was my first exposure when I was a teenager. Or really, my first exposure was, there was a trailer for when I was in middle school. Maybe it was from Mallrats. I forget what VHS had a trailer for a Brawly movie, but it was really heavily advertised as the heavy metal that was part of the soundtrack. And then we're talking about the early to mid 90s. So we had things like Ghost in the Shell, Akira, but anime was still relatively new in America. Lone Wolf and Cub, manga, and obviously the influences in things like Frank Miller's Daredevil. And now looking back, the art design of the late 80s, early 90s X-Men comics, the way Jim Lee, Will Spartasio in particular, and also Rob Liefeld, a lot of the way they design tech is basically just Appleseed. Now being able to see that as an adult, those comics I loved as a kid, I could definitely see the influence of Appleseed on them. Just the wide variety of content. It's a big hit. We're only 2-3 years in, and there's within Shonen Jump. There's all this content that's going to go there. 1987, you kind of all see kind of post-apocalyptic influences, and later you kind of see that more expressed in Sandland. That's what I like about Dragon Ball. Also, that he really wears Akira Toriyama wears his influences on his sleeve. You see the android, that was a clear influence by Terminator. I forget which number of the early androids. See here, this is kind of, he's digging on Mad Max. And then, as this is not just an art book, but the visual history, I want to stop in on this one from Weekly Shonen Jump 87. Issue 34, chapter 134. So we're already into chapter 134, the title page, kind of in terms of world building. He has all these supporting characters adding to this world. And they all have their own kind of stories. Is really, like I said, it's the world building that I love about Dragon Ball. The fighting is great. It's really cool. But for me, it's really the world building. You can see right off the bat, all these characters that Goku is interacting with, this kind of vibrant, rich world. And then 1988, we're in a sci-fi space opera. So kind of again flying by the seat of our pants, and now what was kind of influenced by Chinese mythology, fantasy. Then it went to kind of like kung fu fighting. Now we're into sci-fi space opera, and still keeping, and becoming more of a fighting comic than an adventure comic. And also this page is really great because it shows you one of the rare manga where the protagonist, especially a super popular long-running manga where you're going to see the protagonist not just grow, become an adult, but the design really change in terms of style. That we have this kind of more cartoony style, and then more of a realistic, the adult, larger Goku. Now we can see kind of the cast of characters building, evolving, and really just, Goku's backstory changing so radically. That he was kind of this mysterious monkey boy, kind of influenced by Chinese mythology, his origin, too. Turns out he's a space alien. So it'd be kind of like learning that Superman was a Kryptonian or a space alien years into his run. And again, seeing kind of the different characters, cast of characters, some staying the same, some evolving, some joining, and what will become was already a popular trend, Goku's enemies becoming his allies. So obviously there's Piccolo and Tien. So that this will continue. And this is 89, a smash hit already for years, and still kind of playing with genres, playing with design. That's one of the things I love about Dragon Ball, is that even, especially in Western comics, corporate-owned IP, you're less apt to find someone really willing to take these kind of risks, but maybe just to keep his own sanity and, drawing so many comics, Toriyama is really willing to do those things. And here you see kind of the years where he starts toying around with, is he going to change the protagonist? You know, with Gohan kind of maybe getting ready to take over the mantle as the protagonist of Dragon Ball now. You and I have hindsight. It's well past 1990. We know that Toriyama ended up not doing that. But again, just cool to see the world building and that, you know, that energy of just kind of new discovery, and we're flying by the seat of our pants. And I think one of the analogies that I've heard George R.R. Martin use in terms of two types of authors, that you have architects and gardeners, meaning architects, or we could use that also, let's say, for creators now as well. So writers, artists, people who create stories. There are some that are architects where everything is very detailed, very plotted out, very planned out. And then we have gardeners that are kind of allowing this world to kind of organically grow. And Toriyama is clearly more a gardener than an architect. I like to think of myself in the same vein. So I definitely appreciate this kind of the energy, the fun, the discovery, wearing your influences on your sleeve, and just kind of the enthusiasm is something I could really appreciate. And then this page, we've already seen this in the poster, and we've seen him drew dragons a few times. Toriyama also did art design for RPGs for the Super Nintendo and other video game content. But what I like about this, that you could really see in terms of that it's kind of a similar layout, but substituting in the dragon for the kind of this mechanical Ed 209 RoboCop legs with a motorcycle chassis, that the breadth of kind of what he could do something kind of high fantasy in terms of this dragon deal, or go kind of more sci-fi, maybe even kind of like Diesel Punk with this kind of kooky machine. And obviously, got a little Dr. Slump reference. He was already, Akira Toriyama was already a big deal before Dragon Ball hit with Dr. Slump. I love Gohan and a dinosaur plot. You know, a kid with this is obviously not his pet dinosaur, but Gohan and a dinosaur. That's a classic. And then we kind of, again, kind of see as this is evolving, the different characters, some characters staying part of the main crew of Goku's allies, but you know, their designs changing, evolving, and other characters joining as former enemies, time travelers. It's cool that Goku can fly, but I do miss the Flying Nimbus. Maybe with some of the younger characters, Flying Nimbus can stay around in Dragon Ball Super and some of the newer stories. This is, I mean, this is one of the reasons to get this book. This is from Akira Toriyama's World, the cover of that, and I guess that's another art book. But you could really see in terms of kind of what he can do with a little bit of time. You know, when he's not doing weekly comics, look at this kind of detail, rendering, and our boy Goku. You know, you can tell he's been drawing this guy for a while because he could put him in all kinds of different poses, expressions. So this is kind of a World War II GI Goku, and I'm digging it. It's from different Shonen Jump covers. Yeah, I know this is some people's favorite stuff, like Fusion. To me, it's interesting, but it's not what's most interesting about his work. It's fun. It's definitely fun, and I enjoy it, but it's not the most different power levels and fusions aren't what I find the most interesting about Toriyama's work. And you can see still introducing new characters. Characters are growing. Characters are having kids. So it's not like a Western-owned IP where you're constantly resetting to the initial status quo, a la Amazing Spider-Man. Allowing these characters to grow, and that's one of the things I enjoy about these stories, that they continue to evolve. We're not resetting to a status quo. We continue to grow, and this image is a perfect example of that. And also, you know, some of his more realistic style mixed with his cartoony style. So this really shows a lot of what he can do. This is from Weekly Shonen Jump 95, issue 3/4, fold out poster calendar. So again, a very impressive artwork. But at the same time, while he's making weekly Dragon Ball comics, he's producing stuff like this for a Shonen Jump magazine as well. Just that to me, that's just that workload, that work ethic is even makes this amazing art even more impressive. And lastly, you got 2000. We're kind of wrapping up. Just want to say, still kind of having Dr. Slump references in his work. For those not familiar with Dr. Slump, it's a little girl android. So if you enjoy Astounding Tales, Dr. Slump will probably be your Jimmy Jam as well. And it's also humorous. So, you know, I don't know if it's maybe, you know, I feel like with Akira Toriyama, humor, no matter what he does, is kind of always kind of seeping in his way in there, even if he's trying to be kind of super serious. And I'm in no way comparing myself in a league as a creator, but that's something I find with my work as well. Even when I try to be as uber serious as possible, humor kind of creeps in there, kind of the absurdity of life. And then by 2013, we could see new characters, old characters, characters that were literally in like Bulma, the first issues of Dragon Ball, Oolong, the Ox King, Shu and Mei, but brand new Dragon Ball Super characters, like Beerus. So again, this really captures what I enjoy the most about his work, that you can really see the different types of characters in terms of every one of these characters. They're not all different genres, but you can see how different characters can allow him to explore different genres, different tones, and even different art styles. And I love that they're all in this wonderful, energetic world. So that's I highly recommend this book. It has a great Akira Toriyama interview in the back, or 2 interviews where he talks about his work. You have all these covers. It's really it's a wonderful book. Whether you're a Dragon Ball enthusiast, you want to learn more about manga, you want to learn more about comics, because in the end, manga or comics. Personally, I find the idea of like calling things graphic novels, manga, you know, some of it's a bit pretentious, and some of it's just, they're comic books. It's sequential art. That's really what we're talking about here. My academic training here's Akira Toriyama's interviews. My academic training is actually in film theory. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in film theory. And one of the things in terms of my academic training, that when you're looking at a film, and I don't think this is true of storytelling and just art in general, what is the materiality of what we're looking at? Like, what is it in a literal sense? That's like really step one in terms of an analysis of a work, a piece of art, etc. And in terms of whether it's manga, graphic novels, whatever you want to call that, it's sequential art. It's using a series of images to tell a story. Now, it's not a motion picture. Film, motion pictures, movies, television, they're showing images in such a rapid speed that it creates the illusion of motion. These are still images. We're organizing still images to tell a story. It's sequential art, visual storytelling. So I don't really like these kind of terms or words that kind of separate, or for lack of a better word, ghettoize different kind of mediums, because frankly they are all the same medium, and I'm really not one to kind of church things up, or so I kind of like the most basic simple word. It's comic books. They're comics, but more power to you if you like things like graphic novels or your manga. But for however you define that medium of storytelling, if you enjoy that, you're going to enjoy this visual history of Dragon Ball. And I encourage also people who like Dragon Ball to check out some of Toriyama's other work if you're not already super familiar with it. And that's another edition of Jake Reads Comics, as always, brought to you by Astounding Tales.